Hello viewers. So basically, I'm creating this video to talk about my counting. Now, for people who don't have any similar conditions, symptoms, or whatever you'd call this, who don't do this type of counting, this whole video might seem like just a crazy person talking about crazy stuff that doesn't make any sense. And this whole video is off the cuff, so it might be a bit all over the place, but I'm gonna try my best to explain my counting. Now, the title of this video, I'll probably put something like my OCD counting or counting in OCD or something. Because as far as I understand, this is a function, I guess, of OCD of some sort. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people about this in my life and people who have similar experiences, similar condition, disorder, whatever you want to call it. And people seem to have all different variants, but similar sort of thing. Some people in my family, some of my friends. But my condition seems to be a lot different and a lot more maybe intense than what other people that I know have experienced. So basically counting. Where this basically started in my life was as young as I can remember, or maybe not as young as I can remember, maybe I would say beginning of high school years, I started counting anything that's within sight. Like visually anything that you can see, I count. Now, I'm going to go in more depth and explain the rules and more intricacies of this counting. That's what the video is about. But basically, the premise of this was I started as a young kid by attributing numerical values to different things in the world. For example, I was picking up random objects now with my tall boy, but something that's like a full color like this, black, that's got a value of 1. So I'll count that as 1. Something that's white, like a piece of paper. Let's say the white piece of the paper, if it was just all white, it would be half, so white is a half. Anything that's clear, like for example, the lens of a sunglass, even though it's not lightly colored, it's clear, that would be half. And anything that's shiny, for example, like a key, metal that's shiny would be a 1.5. And something that's textured, for example, like this, would usually be a 2. Now, a lot of these rules aren't super concrete, they're down to a lot of interpretation. But basically, when I was a young kid, for some reason, I started to attribute number values, usually to colors and objects, and I would start counting things. For example, something like you see here, this poster, I would count an object like this and count each part of the frame. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and the glass would be half, that would be 4.5, and I would continue counting and counting. So when I was young, it was pretty simple. It was mostly counting objects, panels, like a school would, you have a chair and it would have legs and the legs would be one structure, so that would be 1, 2, and I would just count objects like this. Now, as I've been getting older, I've been creating more and more rules in my head and more variations of this type of counting to the point where what started as a simple number system with basically colors, whites, clears, and shiny things that had values of half, 1, 1.5, or 2 became a lot more intricate. And I started counting more things. Now, as I got older, this counting would have to get to certain values. So I would have to count objects and I would get to usually some sort of multiples of 4, which I think is common amongst people who count things. But I would count things to, let's say, 8, 16, 20, 40, as high as probably 80. But I would always have my limits where my brain, I guess, wouldn't allow me to go as just berserk and go crazy because there was some level of normalcy that I understood I had to have. So this wasn't something that I don't think ever overtook my life or ever overtook my normal function every day. Sometimes I daydream a bit and get really into counting intricate objects. But as I've got older, I think I've found ways to mediate this and created different rules to stop my brain from going too high. So basically where this counting kept going, kind of more and more intense and more rules and becoming more and more specific. For example, the kind of rule set I've got now, the things that I count most commonly is letters, stuff like this forever. If this see how the letters are white, each letter is a half. So that's 7 letters, that's 3.5. This is 6 letters here, but although it's got an I, even though it doesn't have a dot, that would be lowercase, I count the I as two separate items visually, because lowercase i's and uppercase i's I just count as 2, just one of those arbitrary rules. So this here is 7 and 7, so that would be 14, but because each one of these is only a half because it's white, that would be 3.5, 3.5. So those lettering is 7. The glass here, for example, because the glass has got, let's say, 6 surfaces, the front surface, the back surface, let's say the pane of glass from the side, you've got the bottom, the side, the top, the other side, that's 6 surfaces, and the inside of it also counts as 1. So that's half, 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 half. So that's 3.5 in total. So already counting that, I've got those letters together, 3.5, that's 7, plus 3.5 is 10.5. Then I'd go into counting the letters, and I'd be counting the gaps between the letters, that O, R, R, and that can just go on forever. So as in-depth as I want to count that, I can count that. But my brain is able to stop myself and just say, okay, you've counted the 3.5 in the glass, the 7 of the letters, count the whole logo as, just count just the letters, or I can basically choose how deep I want to go depending on how much or how little my mind's occupied. If my mind is quite occupied, by the way, I do this 24/7, as this is not something that comes out at random times. I count shit all the time. If I'm really preoccupied or doing something like I'm at work, or I'm doing something that requires a lot of intense use of my mind, playing sports or at the gym or something, I'll count things a little bit quicker, and I'll look at an object like that and I'll maybe just count the glass, and the whole thing I'll just say 2 for everything inside and move on to the next. And I have different rules. For example, the sky is always 1.5 because the blue of the sky is blue, the clouds are white, that's 1.5 is 1.5. The road is always 1.5, no matter what's going on, because I just imagine it as being a bitumen road with white as those stripes, like the checkered lines for lanes. So that would be 1.5. So sometimes let's say if I'm going for a run outside, I'll just count little random things, but I always just count the road and the sky. It'd be 1.5, 1.5, 3. Now, whereas I said before when I was young, these counting would have to get to certain arbitrary numbers, I think at some point I must have realized that it was a bit too difficult and too mentally taxing to always keep track of these numbers. Whereas the real thing that my brain needed to do was just to count. It didn't really need to come to any conclusions or any end values of numbers. I just needed to count. So these days, I'm not counting anymore to certain values. I've found that my brain just counts and counts and counts, and I don't actually reach any values. For example, if I'm running, like what I said before, I've got the bitumen road and the white checkered lines, that's 1.5. And the sky is blue sky and white clouds, 1.5. I'll just go 1.5, 3, 1.5, 3, 1.5, 3. And I can run for 45 minutes and just count nothing but that. My brain's always counting. Sometimes more intense, sometimes less. Sometimes I could be daydreaming and counting just that. Or sometimes I could be interested running and counting way more things. Common things that I count is glass, letters, street signs, registration values on cars. They're probably the biggest ones. Things with lettering, for example, like numbers, like a stop sign that has the red ring and a 70 k's an hour. You've got the line is 1, the 7 is 1, the 0 is 1, that's 3. Then you've got all the white bits, outside, inside the circle, inside the 0. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4.5. The back of the sign is shiny metal, that's 5 and 6, because 1.5. And the post is 7. So I look at a street sign and count 7. And I have the ability sometimes, if I'm running consistently and I start grouping these things, I'll just look at every sign that says 70 and just go 7, 14, 7, 14, or just 7, 7, 7. So I count things. They don't always have to come to an end value, but I'm always counting constantly. Shapes, anything with shapes and distinct lines and distinct separations and colors, I count. Another thing that helped me with this type of counting was the understanding that I'm the creator of this wicked game. Wicked not in the awesome sense, but in this kind of convoluted, weird game in my head. That I'm the creator of it, and being the creator of the game, I can make the rules and I can break the rules and I can change the rules. So, for example, I've got a family member who has a similar type of counting to this, but her issue is that she has to count and reach certain numbers, and it makes her go crazy, and she can't reach a certain number, or she has to keep counting, or there's always has to be an end goal. If she doesn't complete the numbers to a round number, like 32, 64, multiples of 4, or squares and stuff like that, she just doesn't enjoy it. Whereas for me, I found that I was able to separate myself from the end goal and just change the rules to make the game such that all I got to do is count, and it makes me happy. Like, I don't have to, not really makes me happy, but it keeps me sane. So all I got to do is count. I don't have to come to end numbers. So I find that there's a few areas in my life where this has actually helped me, which is really fortunate. So people would, say this is OCD disorder, ADHD disorder. It's got disorder as the D in all of them. But I think where it could be I don't think it's disorder, but where it could be a detriment in some areas, maybe lack of focus in some areas, I think it's helped me massively in other areas. For example, in my job, where I do a lot of measuring things, a lot of online ordering of things, that has to be precise measuring, precise ordering, and I can't really screw up numbers. The system I have of checking numbers and measuring them, and this counting comes through in that realm as well, where the same things that make me have to count is the same stuff that makes me have to check these numbers like 1,000 times, to the point where I don't really make mistakes in certain areas of my work, because of almost the superpower this counting has given me. So one thing I would also add is ever since a young kid, and I think this is another function of the same sort of condition or what's going on, is I've had a lot of tics. You can probably notice winking and stuff in this video or certain things that I do, but I've had tics definitely since I was probably as young as I can remember, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I've had different tics, and I've always had at any given time in my life 3 or 4 of them, I would say, 3 or 4 tics, and those 3 or 4 will kind of swap out for other ones. So I'll drop one off and gain another one, but I've always got a few at each particular time. Some last for a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years, but probably never more than a couple of years for any given tic. And I've also got tics that only come out in certain places. Like I've got certain tics that I have at the gym, certain tics when I'm playing sports, certain tics when I'm on the computer, certain ones on the PlayStation, all different things. So I have got tics and I've got this counting. I would say those are the 2 biggest elements. Now, this is kind of textbook OCD symptoms as far as I've Googled. But interestingly enough, I had a customer of mine at work who I spoke to who said there was a distinction between OCD and what I had. And how she explained it, or what she said, was that OCD is when you feel like if you don't do these certain tics or do this certain counting, something bad will happen. But if you have what I have, where I've never had this sense of if I don't count or do my tics, something bad will happen, that's OCPD. Now, this is something just one lady said to me. I did a bit of research on my own on Google and I couldn't find anything correlating to what she said. So if anyone in the comments has any insight to this, in terms of this impending doom feeling with tics or with counting or whatever it is, let me know, because my brother says the same thing, that he's got this counting type, he's got some type of counting and stuff and some type of tics, but he thinks he's had this feeling when he was younger, especially if he didn't do them or follow through with them, that something bad would happen, or something bad would happen, or his family would die, or some type of impending doom. So whatever functions of my OCD there are, I've never had this impending doom. So counting, tics, and that is basically the whole scope of it. Now, I could go really in depth in specific examples, and if people have any questions in the comments of this video and want to ask like specific questions, because there's so much detail I can go into regarding this, like certain rules that I have about colors, shapes, sizes, grouping, things that I read more commonly, windows, cars when I'm driving, awareness, all these things. There's like a million questions. Feel free to leave them in the comments, because this is quite interesting and I wouldn't mind having some level of discourse where people can comment things and I can make follow-up videos. The only thing is I'm a bit lazy with editing, so it's easier to make a one take on my phone and upload it straight to YouTube. So I wouldn't mind if people are interested and share this video around and comment on it. I'll be happy to make another video kind of with a bunch of questions and try and answer them. But this is basically the kind of main scope of it. I count things all the time. I count people's faces. I count, hair is 1, skin is 2, beard is 3, the whites in the eyes equal to 4, the eyebrows are 5 and 6, eyelashes 7, 8, 9, 10. The iris and thing is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 in the eyes. Lips are 17, tongue is 18, gums are 19 and 20, and teeth, I just count the front ones. 21, because they're white, 2 of them is 1, and 22. Don't count all the teeth, I just consider that and that as top and bottom row, that's enough. Just one of my rules. Face is what I count a lot. I count a lot of shirts as well. For example, panels, I love to count panels. Front panel is 1, back panel is 2, side panel 3, side panel 4. This, because it's textured, is 5, 6. If it was a white shirt, it would be half, 1. So a white shirt would be 1, 2, 3, whereas this shirt is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's, certain things I count more commonly than others. I count the blinds in my room quite a bit. So my pelmet is half, and then the blinds are half because of the front face, middle, back face. The outsides are also halves because they're clearer or white. And the little rail at the bottom is shiny metal, so that's 1.5. And I count the cornices of the rooms a lot because it's kind of a stepped cornice. It's got like half, and I count that on all the sides, and it just never ends. So really, this counting goes as, I can explain this as far as people are interested in. It's just kind of hard to do it off the cuff. So basically that's my counting. I feel like some people that know me know about this or have asked me questions and I don't really go in depth. Some people know more deeply, but I guess I'm going to post this video to Facebook because I think it's quite interesting. I don't mind getting views on these things. And I guess if people have an opinion, feel free to let me know in the comments. If people have any questions, if some people have a similar experience, or if you know someone who's got a similar experience, feel free to share the video around. Because I think for me, I wouldn't mind to have a bit more, not even clarity on what this is, but just have more people to relate to and understand, and maybe I can help people with if they have similar type of thing going on with them where they find it bothering them or struggling, because I don't find it doesn't bother me, it doesn't really impact my life, and there's certain rules and things that over years and years of doing having this counting going on, especially the counting, that's the biggest part of my OCD. I feel like I've kind of got it down to an art where it doesn't bother me. I find it's kind of nice and soothing, if anything. Like if I'm daydreaming, I'm not daydreaming about things, I'm counting generally. So yeah, if there's anyone you know that has a similar thing going on, maybe I can help them. Maybe they're just interested to talk to someone that has a similar thing, and maybe they don't feel so alone. Maybe they feel different or weird because of this counting. But yeah, definitely I do it. I'm happy to talk about it. Feel free to share this video around. Hope everyone that watched this has a lovely day, lovely rest of 2023, and yeah, peace out, everybody.